He has given us the opportunity to be present in each other's company, to remember and to keep alive the most important values that sustain our humanity and our spirituality and give us life in this world before the reward and the benefit that we expect from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we pray to Allah for in the hereafter. And that is the remembrance and the commemoration of the lives and the values, the sacrifices and the tragedy of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. In the few nights that we will be together, I hope to say a few words about a topic that I think is very important for our Muslim communities living in the West. And that is what it means and how is it possible for us to live a God-centered life. As many of us, we go through our normal life and we consume the media, we read, or these days more likely we watch things on TV, on our phones. We exist as part of a society and we are members of this culture and this country. And all of those influences within our life are taking us away not just from living a God-centered life, but even from understanding conceptually what a God-centered life is. Living a God-centered life has always been difficult. Even when the very first human beings were inhabiting this earth, and you have two brothers, Habil and Qabil, then there is the temptation of shaitan. You don't have Disney and its millions of dollars that are spent in marketing a non-Islamic way of life. You didn't need to have the seminar at that time that was just announced, which is a very important topic and a very important issue for our communities and especially for our school-age generation about gender identity and the different messages which are being given that are destructive and unhealthy, not just for our spiritual life, but even for our emotional well-being and our physical health, that deform our conception of self, that deform our conception of soul, and that deform even our physical body when people engage in treatment for something that is not their ailment. These did not exist. And the many other temptations that exist because of technology, because of politics, because of the economy, because of culture and society, they did not exist in the time of Prophet Adam and his immediate family, or in the time of Prophet Nuh, alayhi salam, or our other earlier prophets. That doesn't mean that it was easier to live a God-centered life. In many ways, people's horizon and their understanding of what is humanly possible was more limited. Their loyalty was to their tribe and to their family. And so in some ways, they had just as much difficulty or more living a God-centered life as we do. But there are two new challenges that have come in our time that didn't exist before. Two challenges that are more present or more severe in our time than they were in times past. One is that in times past, living a life of principle and living a life devoted to God was not as unusual and as far beyond the horizon of society as it is today. Because even a deviated religion still had some sense of spirituality, of transcendent values, of serving a goal beyond the self. Even those people whose loyalty was for the tribe, even the mushrikeen of Quraysh, what similarity did they have to Islam? They worshipped 360 idols which were found just in the precinct of the Kaaba. The idols that were in Ta'if and were in other cities were many, many more, and people had idols in their own homes. So they worshipped idols great and small, of wood and stone. They would say things like, أَنُطْعِمُ مَنْ لَوْ يَشَاءُ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ. You tell us to give sadaqah, you tell us to take care of the needy. If God wanted, He could have fed these people. If God didn't care to feed them, why should we feed them? Now this is not something that anybody would publicly say today, even if it is in their heart. Look at the most heartless person, and maybe they might think that. And maybe if you hack into their phone and you look at their private texts, they might express a similar sentiment if they're recorded secretly. But today, nobody would dare say that, because they know that even the majority of people in society would not accept it. But in the time of the Prophet, it was possible to publicly say, if God wanted, He would have fed them, so let them die. They're not important to God, so why should they be important to me? Why should I give my wealth, even if I have more than I can count, to save the life of somebody who doesn't even have a morsel of food to eat and keep them alive from starvation? So what similarity do they have to our time? You might say that they were even further away from the truth, and they had a more deviated sense of values than we do today. And you wouldn't be entirely wrong. But even those people in Quraysh, they would be willing to die to protect their children, their families, their wives, their tribe. So they would be very far from the true belief of one God and monotheism. From the value of every human life and every human soul that we learn from our belief that Allah is not the creator of me and my family, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator and the sustainer of all of humanity, and in fact all that exists in heaven and earth. Human beings, animals, plants, and even those things that exist in the depth of the ocean or under the sand that I have not seen and I have no knowledge of, and many things that exist maybe in other parts of the universe that we have not even imagined. Because we believe in one God, who is the creator and sustainer of all, everything created by God has value. If you believe in a tribal God, then the God of the enemy tribe is another idol. And so you are at war. In that sense, they were further away from the truth. But in one sense, they had it easier, because of the idea that if there is a threat to my family or whatever it is that I hold dear, that it is worth giving my life to save them and to protect them, was present within their society. A sense of honor and ghayra and sacrifice was present. It just needed to be modified, that your honor and your sense of sacrifice shouldn't be for your family or for your tribe. That honor is good, that readiness to sacrifice is good, but direct it towards something that is worthy of that sacrifice. Your life is not cheap. It was given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the idea that you are willing to sacrifice yourself for honor is a positive trait. But don't sacrifice yourself for something that is beneath the dignity and the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you when He has created you. Salawat ala Muhammad. Now this is a challenge that we have that people did not have in the past. That today, the idea that you should give up something for the sake of another person is almost lost in society. I have counseled people, for example, and many of us have experienced this. It is a story of our community and our own families and our own loved ones, where even parents will not be able to set aside their differences for the sake of the children. And sometimes we tell ourselves this excuse that my children would want me to be happy. Yes, your children don't want you to be unhappy, but your children want you and need you. And Allah, who created you, wants you to fulfill your responsibility for their upbringing and providing them a good home and a good family environment. And sometimes that means that your own happiness in the moment needs to take a back seat towards what is your obligation or what is your responsibility. But where will you get that message in our society today? That this is not what is important. What is important is your responsibility. So this is a challenge that we have today, that in the past, at least society recognized that people have responsibilities and there are goals, there are responsibilities, there are duties that go beyond your serving of your own ego or your own whim or your own self. One challenge is that today society has lost that sense that there is something more important than myself. Now, what is that thing? In the past, societies didn't always give the right answer. They served a false idol that has no truth. And today, people might not have the right answer. But at least in the past, people knew that this was a question that they should ask. And the only thing they needed was to get the right answer. Today, for many people, it isn't even a question. Just do it. Do what you want. And that is not even a question in people's mind, that what should I devote my life to? And the second challenge, and this is even more difficult and insidious, inshallah, in the coming nights, I will explore and expand this issue. That sometimes we don't know what it means to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to live for God. I remember once I was speaking to somebody, a very sincere young person. I want to go to the Hawza, and I want to study and I want to devote myself to Islam. But my parents are not supporting me, so my parents are an obstacle to my spirituality. Now, many of us, we can relate to that. Sometimes the child has an objection because the parents don't let them choose the career they want. Sometimes the parents don't encourage them to serve the community, whether as a volunteer or as a student or desiring to go to the Hawza, or maybe they don't approve of the person that I want to marry, whatever the issue is. But here, it isn't that society is telling you just serve yourself, don't serve God. I want to serve God. But the problem is that I don't know what that means, and I think that, for example, my parents are an obstacle to my serving God.